What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it's once again time to touch base with the Battlefield side of things. Lately we got a big piece of news direct from the developers, confirming that they are not going to have class-locked weapons in the next Battlefield game. So this means any class can use any weapon type, there's no limitations there. However, instead, what they're going to be doing is providing benefits to pairing the appropriate weapon with its typical class counterpart. And the example they provided here is with sniper rifles. Previously, you could only use sniper rifles with the recon class, whereas now in this new Battlefield game, you can use a sniper with any class you want. However, if you pair it with recon, you will get an additional benefit while using that sniper rifle, and that is increased breath hold time. So in that way, you'll be encouraged to use a sniper rifle with recon, but not locked to only using recon if you want to snipe. They also mentioned that for DMRs, carbines, and shotguns, none of these will have any of these signature weapon traits. It's just going to be applying to the other weapon classes. But then on top of that, as an additional potential incentive to pair the appropriate weapon type with a certain class, each class is also going to have a signature trait or a passive perk attached to it. And the example they provided here is with recon. Regardless of the weapon you're using, you will automatically spot or ping enemy players when you aim down sight at them. And this is the type of thing that could also encourage but not force you to use guns like sniper rifles when using recon, because that passive trait would be really well suited to hanging back to like an Overwatch position with a sniper rifle and getting a good view over the battlefield and marking those enemies for your teammates in the process. So that does encourage you to use sniper rifles with it, but you're not locked to using sniper rifles. Now, the response I've been seeing to this news online, especially from hardcore Battlefield fans, is generally quite negative. There are a few people here or there that are pushing back against that and saying this is actually a good thing, or they're totally fine with it. And that's fair enough, but I wanted to share my 2 cents on this as somebody that has always dabbled with Battlefield. I've been playing the franchise for quite a long time, but it's never really been my main FPS game. So I'm familiar with it, but I wouldn't identify as like a Battlefield player, for instance. And my main fear with not locking weapons to classes is that everyone's just gonna go for assault rifles because they're the most versatile options out there, and then they can just select whatever class they want, and there's really no careful decision making and weighing pros and cons when selecting your class. I know it may sound counterintuitive, but sometimes providing too much freedom to choose actually decreases variety in gameplay. By locking weapon types to classes, it creates a much more unique gameplay experience depending on the class that you use. And you have to play to the strengths of your class, and that's largely enforced by the weapon that's in your hand. If you want to play recon, well, you're committed to that specialized role of hanging back, taking more of an Overwatch position, and sniping players. If you want maximum versatility, then use assault, and you can use the assault rifles, which are the most versatile guns out there, but in the process, you're sacrificing some of the specialization that you can get with the other classes out there. So having that weapon class lock allows for more depth to the gameplay experience, as the classes have much more clearly defined roles with their own strengths and weaknesses and limitations. The moment you remove that weapon lock and allow any class to use any weapon, it breaks that whole dynamic, because now you can gain specialization in your class without having to adapt your gameplay style to fit that role by being stuck with a particular type of weapon. And this really messes with squad and team play as well, which is a huge aspect of the Battlefield franchise, since you'll be able to rely less on players playing to the intended role of their class. So you'll have recon players rushing in, playing close quarters with an SMG, or the assault class with medic abilities, hanging back, sniping on a hill, nowhere near their team, unable to provide those heals or quick revives to their squad mates. And on top of that, you might have a sniper sitting on a hill with infinite ammo now, because there's no downside to doing that. They can select too much of that versatility with their role, and they don't rely on their squad mates to make up for the downsides of their classes. And that's quite frustrating, because traditionally you could see your squad composition and you could see like, hey, I've got a recon on my team. Okay, that guy's definitely sniping. He's going to be hanging back, providing that Overwatch position. You get a pretty good idea of what that guy is going to be doing throughout a match. And you could often look at your squad's composition and decide what role you want to play to best complement the roles that your squad mates were playing. The moment you remove this weapon lock, it throws all of that out the window. You don't know what that recon player is going to do or what that engineer player is going to be doing, because he could be using any weapon type and playing in whatever way he wants with that class. He doesn't have to play to his role. And that's such a fundamental part of Battlefield in my eyes, and it's one of the things that makes the Battlefield franchise special and unique from other FPS franchises. Now, at the end of the day, those are just my fears with this on paper, and I am leaning toward this not being the greatest idea. However, they are still in early testing phases, And I'm definitely open to at least giving it a try to see how it goes. I think a large part of how effective this new system is going to be is going to hinge on how powerful these weapon specializations are. They only gave us the one example with sniper rifles, and increased hold breath duration, that's not ridiculously powerful by any means. It's definitely helpful, but it's not something where I'm going to feel like I really need to use recon to take full advantage of my sniper rifle. I'll still be able to snipe just fine without that. So I'm curious to see what they do with the other classes, and I do hope that these weapon specializations are quite powerful to at least really strongly encourage people to make that proper pairing of weapon types with a particular class. Now, on the flip side, arguing against locked weapons to classes, by opening things up and allowing for that freedom to choose, that could actually encourage people to branch out to other classes more as well, because there's also the argument that many people will just use assault all the time because they just want to use assault rifles, for instance, and it is kind of lame when the vast majority of matches are populated by one class type, and then there's just the odd person here or there that branches out. And the sole reason that people are gravitating toward that class is for the weapon type itself, not to actually play in the role of that class. Although, as I said, the weapon in your hand does largely determine what role you're naturally going to fall into, but we're arguing against locked classes now. Additionally, and I think one of the big reasons outside of potentially monetization that they are making this decision, on the monetization side, if they're trying to sell weapon skins, it's harder to sell those skins if you can only use that skin when playing with one particular class. So I think that's at least part of the reason, but I think another reason is to make Battlefield a bit more accessible and appeal to a wider audience. Because for a lot of non-Battlefield fans, when they come to Battlefield, and I remember experiencing this for myself a long time ago when I first started playing Battlefield, I thought it was really weird and kind of frustrating that if I wanted to use my favorite gun, I had to use a particular class. And I wanted to branch out and use the other classes, but then I'd have to sacrifice using my favorite gun. So I think this decision is largely made to appeal to that wider audience, and that may be a good and healthy thing overall, or it may not be. There's definitely a solid argument that trying to appeal to everyone ends up appealing to no one. And I think with many games in recent years, we've been seeing a lot of this homogenization where a lot of games, they don't want to specialize too much. They don't want to really lean into being special and unique. They want to appeal to as many people as possible. And the problem with that is then you often end up with a really uninspired feeling generic shooter, rather than a game that's really special and sets itself apart from others on the market by really leaning into its strengths, despite the fact that that may not have as much wide appeal. And as I said, the class system is one of the biggest elements that separates Battlefield from the rest, and watering down that class system may also water down what makes Battlefield special in the FPS genre. In my eyes, this would be almost akin to Call of Duty removing streaks from the game, or watering them down by just putting them on a timer or something, rather than having to earn them in the way that you do. And similar to this Battlefield situation, it could be argued that the streak system may actually push a lot of players away because they see it as the rich getting richer and it leads to snowballing in games, and on a surface level, those seem like reasonable arguments. However, it doesn't really consider how important the streak system is to the DNA of Call of Duty. And if you remove that, it removes a huge part of what makes Call of Duty special and what sets it apart from the rest, and also a huge part of the gameplay loop that keeps people addicted and coming back for more. This is my fear with making the class system in Battlefield less special, less meaningful, by allowing any class to use any weapon. As I said, I'm totally willing to give this a shot. Maybe I'm overreacting here. Maybe it's really not going to be that big of a deal. But for me, I really want to play the best Battlefield game possible with this next iteration, and I do feel this may hold that back from being the case. Now, of course, those are just my opinions on this situation, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the fact that they're not locking certain weapon types to various classes in the next Battlefield game, and instead they're offering little perks to encourage you to make certain pairings, but not lock you into certain pairings? Do you guys think this is good for the franchise or bad for the franchise overall? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.